What am I supposed to say? Hi, I'm a professional overthinker, and that's about it.
I'm professional overthinker too. I think that's a much better position, which is actually fun. I'm going to write that down. I have a list.
Oh God. Oh no. Where's
Yeah,
my
I'm gonna
list?
grill you. Where is your list? Come on.
Okay, I have my
Okay,
list.
so this is what's gonna happen, is I'm not gonna say like, okay, and start. We're gonna just kind of stumble into our podcast. Is that okay with you?
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah,
Okay, we'll do that.
I would love that.
So I think that the best thing is that we just talk kind of about nothing, and then probably knowing us, we'll get into something.
Yeah, sounds
and then
good.
we'll go from there.
I found that when I first entered, I think it was either you or Clifton came to get me. And
it was Clifton.
At first I was
he's my secretary.
Right, your secretary. I was going to be like, yes, that's me, just be very professional and walk in. But right off the bat, I started to make conversation, and I was all just giggly about it. And see, it happens when I am excited about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
As obviously. So I think the best way for me to proceed in life is to constantly surround myself with things that allow me to be genuine. And perhaps that's why I pursued art, because it excites me. When I'm in the moment, when I'm acting, or when I'm watching a really good film, or I'm talking to someone about the film that I watched, I can't help but be myself. And in that moment, I surprise myself sometimes. I'm like, wow, I didn't know I could be this deep. I didn't know that I could be this, insightful. It was truly just because I was letting myself be that. Before starting this interview, I was thinking about, okay, just be confident, But at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, this is an interview, so I'm going to be obviously a little held back. But when we have conversations, this interview is not that different from when we talk. I am so I'm so myself that I surprise myself. I'm like, wow, I think I agree with what I just said there. I'm not like, in my head, I'm not just like, maybe I shouldn't have said it that way.
Yeah.
Right? And so confidence is being yourself. Confidence is just, whatever it is that you have to say, just say it. Yeah, you might be wrong.
Yeah.
But all of us have, personal experiences that aren't wrong. So we're all coming from some sort of wisdom, some sort of experience that's informing the way that we talk.
But do you find that your confidence is dependent on the person you're talking to or the circumstances you're in? Like, because I guess on some level, it, your level of comfort is dependent on if you're talking to a close friend or a stranger. But is there a way that you can get to confidence despite who you're talking to?
I think that's something that I'm still working on, especially because of the type of person I am, who is, afraid of what people might think of her.
Yeah.
If I'm not around the right company, if I don't feel as though what I'm saying is resonating or that it's being accepted, it can be disagreed with. That's not a problem. I'm completely myself with my parents, and half the time they think I'm not saying the right things. But I'm unapologetic about what I'm saying. It's simply because I know that no matter what I say, I'm being respected or I'm being accepted as me. That's it, right? So that very much does depend on the type of company that you're dealing with. But I think the end of the journey should be, for me and for anybody, is coming to a point where it's not the other person's response that's driving you.
Yeah.
It's your inner peace, your inner excitement. Yeah, absolutely.
And what was it? I think I've asked you this question before, but what was it about us as naive first years / the audition slides that we gave you / what you knew about the film that excited you to that level about coming in for that audition?
So first off, I didn't know you were a first year. I came in when just the way that you hold yourself, I was like, yeah, he's like maybe 23, 24. No idea that you were a first year.
I'll take that as a compliment.
It is a compliment. You carry yourself very confidently, I think. I don't know.
I think you're just telling me I'm
nervous.
old, but I'll take it.
Not old. Also, there's nothing wrong with being old. That just means you're more confident and wise, hopefully. I think that entire experience, there wasn't much that I knew about the script. I didn't even know who you guys were. So I didn't come in with any sort of expectations other than the fact that wow, I'm going to be auditioning for my first on-screen role, you know? And that in itself has always been a dream of mine. Something I've held on to, but I never did. And me stumbling across, you know, your casting call, that was just I wasn't looking for anything. I saw it spontaneously. I had the courage to be like, okay, why not? There's nothing to lose. And I went in with so much excitement that I was like, even if I don't get a role, I think you had something in the in your description that was that, you know, you're also looking for crew members. And I'm like, you know what? It's fine. Maybe I can just find a way to learn from this experience. And at the end of it all, because of course my mind goes to the worst possible scenario, which is that I'm not going to get anything. It's that, wow, I've allowed myself to finally go audition for something. You know, I should have, since I knew this was something I wanted to do, why didn't I start 5 years ago? I didn't, because I think, once again, another trait of mine, which I'm sure many people can relate to, is that I'm a perfectionist in both the good and bad sense, in which I always thought that I have to get to a point of excellence and then I can go ahead and try to pursue what I want to do, right? And you're never going to get there, you know, and I've had setbacks, and I've been still having setbacks, but it was that, you know, moment of courage that, you know what, just screw it, just apply, see if it works or not. So when I went into the audition, I think it was like one of the first, I went in without expectations, and I think that's what made the experience enjoyable and probably played to me finally getting the role. So
Well, I was gonna say, when you left,
yeah,
you know, we did the kind of the niceties of, okay, thank you very much, you know, that was great, we'll let you know by email in a week, handshake,
yeah.
and then you left. Clifton like checked to make sure you'd cleared the side of the building, and then we literally started jumping up and dancing, saying we found the one, because we knew, like, because that was we auditioned you on day 4 of our 4-day audition process, and we hadn't found the right person, and so you were our savior. So
oh my god,
yeah.
I don't know what to say. But also that 4th day, I was the one who booked it. I was like, the last possible time I can go in. That's the type of person I am.
Yeah.
Which is not great. I'm trying to learn to just go for it.
Yeah.
But wow, thank you.
And once we got to the table read, where you got to meet the rest of the cast, and everyone got to meet each other for the first time, and we read the script, and I think it went pretty well.
Sure. All I remember is excitement.
Like the first 10 minutes, everyone was kind of on edge, and then I think it was like on page 10, and then we were into it. And I remember finishing that. The best part of it, and this to me this is how I'm gonna make this relevant to the podcast and tie it in, was that people started one by one. I think I asked, is there any way that each of you actually relate to the screenplay? You know, is there some part about the experience of your character, or the themes that we're dealing with about how we heal with pain and moving from avoidance to confrontation of difficult things that you can relate to? And I remember one by one people started to open up. And so I guess I'm wondering at what point you felt like there was some piece of you in the story or in this team, or which of the themes resonated with you most, because I think like we've said, some of those themes we were talking the other day on one of our calls about the film, about how the experience we're going through now in many ways is going to kind of come back and feed into the way that we're able to produce this film.
Yeah. So coming in, I knew that this, you know, it was a story on mental health. Automatically there I had a connection, because I've myself, you know, struggled with poor mental health in the past. But what resonated with me even more is that, you know, your script is a unique take on mental health, yet at the same time it is extremely universal and very relevant, I believe, to any person. It deals with feeling as though you're not the victim, yet suffering, right? And, you know, to put it generally, even if someone hasn't experienced, you know, mental health issues before, I believe that at least anybody in, you know, living with some sort of privilege, has felt the guilt connected to being in that privilege, you know, knowing that there are people suffering, and that, in a sense, you know, perhaps you aren't, you don't deserve the comfort or, you know, once again, just generally the privilege that you have. And I think that was one of the, after our talk during our first read through, that was the point where I'm like, wow, this is such a good script that I was able to connect with it in that sense, and I know that I can find a way to get the audience to connect with that. So that was, I think, the first moment that I connected with the script. And coming to, you know, our time right now with the pandemic, it really does feed into the story that we're trying to tell. So I would say when I first, you know, when I joined you guys on this journey, I was in a really good place in my life. Just, you know, got a script. I was in a play. Was doing good in school. Was gonna go to Europe for the first time this summer. So there was just abundance of things that was just like keeping me really positive. Which isn't to say that it was going to deter me away from understanding what the character was feeling. But when we started going through a pandemic, and I, you know, all of a sudden my 5-year plan that I made for myself, none of it holds anymore. I'm in a point of, you know, starting to feel, you know, hopeless, starting to feel lonely. Of course, this is something that's universal. I feel like everybody's feeling. Our situation is so conducive to those two feelings, which I would also say are probably the catalysts to mental health, to depression, loneliness, and hopelessness. That this pandemic has perhaps been, you know, and is going to be one of the forces that drives us to tell this story and allows us to connect with these characters at a very, very real level. Yeah, so
the ideas you're talking about I agree with you. I think hopelessness and loneliness might be, I mean, there's so much that we're going through, but it seems to me like specifically those two things encapsulate the experience quite well. Because like you say, I think the hopelessness comes from the fact that there's all these, any sense of order that we've had, that we've set up for ourselves, like you say with your 5-year plan, suddenly becomes very precarious. And some of it just straight up flies out the window, you know. A film is canceled, a play stops, classes go online. What is your next year look like, especially for someone who's nearing graduation, right? And so I'm just thinking, you've got that sense of like a very uncertain future. Absolutely. Plus you've got this isolation where you don't even have as easy access to a system to support you through that hopelessness. So it seems like those two issues kind of bounce back and forth and make the other one worse. I guess my question is, how the hell do you deal with that?
So I think as someone who is about to graduate, you know, a student's life can't get any more precarious. You know, all of a sudden I'm thinking about my career, especially with the things that I'm studying. The possibilities are endless, and also I am an indecisive person, so I think I always carry a level of precariousness with me. And I think this pandemic, it's just a reminder that the only certainty that any of us have in life is that life is uncertain, right? So I think the way that I've been dealing with it has been going through a lot of highs and lows. And once again, it may be a blessing in disguise that the pandemic is allowing me to really think deep, and I'm hoping that I come out with enough that can, not even enough, that I can come out with something and say, you know what, these moments in my life weren't wasted. And so I've been looking into a lot of different literature, and I remember that in my 3rd year, in one of my classes, which was basically based on the politics around climate change, I read a book by I believe her name's Joanna Zielinska, and she talks about what do we need to get out of, you know, to deal with climate change. What is it that we need? And she talks about embracing relationality. And what that is that basically we need to rethink our entire existence as clusters of relations based on matter and energy. It's a very social science meets science way of thinking. But when we accept or acknowledge relationality, we inevitably embrace precarity. Because what our life is, what our existence is just a bunch of clusters of temporary stabilized relations. So, you know, we are so conditioned to believe that, or we're conditioned to want security, we're conditioned to want stability. However, security, stability, certainty, all of it is an illusion, right? Our institutions, like, for example, even marriage. Marriage is, why can't we just live in with somebody and live life that way? Marriage allows us to feel as though we have something that will last forever, or something that, you know, we know that because of this contract, this person won't leave me, at least not easily. But at the end of the day, I mean, once again, not to sound cynical, but if nothing else, one person can die. And just like that, everything, all that security that we were craving and hoped for is broken. So it's very scary because we've been conditioned, and we as human beings, I think routine, habit, meditation, prayer, all of it provides us a sense of peace and calm, which is what we strive for and what we want. There's nothing wrong with it. But at the same time, we need to acknowledge that even though we are calm and in moments we can feel peace, at peace, that peace doesn't necessarily have to be forever, and probably won't be, because nothing is certain. So I think that is a mindset that I've been trying to, I guess, come to terms with and really thinking about. And, you know, it's very scary, because that is basically saying that the world is chaos and there's no way for me to control it.
Yeah.
But perhaps that even just acknowledging that perspective can help me be stronger when things get bad, because things are going to get bad always, you know. If nothing else, since we feel connected to people, we might lose someone that we love. And how do we prepare for that? And because I'm so privileged, and I think I've lived a life of immense comfort, maybe that's why I want to be an actor, because I would like to feel more than my mundane life. It doesn't mean, you know, I shouldn't be prepared for the worst, or even if not worse, take something out of this entire experience that I'm dealing with right now.
And so if the default state of us is one of chaos, is the idea that it's important not to try and kid ourselves into thinking we can change that into a state of stability, but rather to just accept that and then constantly search for stability? Or I guess like is it necessary to try and fight the uncertainty?
I think, I mean, I'm still young and I don't know much at all.
No, you're pretty old. Sorry.
Thanks, Eli. Thank you. Well, you look 23. Anyways. Oh God, old is not a bad thing. Once again.
Disclaimer. Yeah.
Right. I mean, sometimes. I mean, I think I've always been afraid of getting older, and you know, I also think about that. Like, okay, well, you know what? What is really bad about being old? I'm gonna be wiser. I'm gonna be more mature, and everything that I'm trying to do right now that is what I want.
Yeah.
So what is it? Is it wrinkles? Wrinkles? Why are wrinkles a bad thing? I mean, why?
Yeah.
Whoever said that wrinkles was, maybe wrinkles is beauty, and having like a plump face is alien-like. Who knows,
Yeah,
right?
I hate baby-faced people. There's no detail, no
That's
texture.
why he keeps the beard. That's why he keeps the beard, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy, right. Your question on stability.
Yeah.
No matter what, I think we're always going to fight against our want of stability or security, right? Because when we feel something good, whether that be love, whether that be success, it's a feeling we want to hold on to. And I don't think anybody would ever want to be stable or secure and never feel good. Be like, okay, I'll do this job, even though I feel absolutely nothing when I do it, because it gives me security. Of course, I'm still young. I don't have a family. I'm financially fine. So perhaps that is what some people want, because at the end of the day, what for them, actually no, not even then, you know, when our parents want a secure job, perhaps even if it doesn't provide them happiness, their happiness is knowing that their children's lives are secure. So we're looking for good feelings, and we're never going to stop wanting to have that good feeling stay with us. Unfortunately, it isn't certain, and obviously it isn't, that we're always going to be happy. Coming back to what Neelam Kumar said about the fact that life is always going to have happiness, sadness, struggle, and that's not the point of it all. It's about trying to reach that, point of joy through the struggle.
I just had a conversation yesterday with someone about, and I know when we were talking about preparing for this podcast, one of the things we were talking about is the idea of truth and belief, and we touched on that in terms of religion. And I'd for the last week, I've been having conversations with people as I try and figure out my own perspective on that. And each time I approached it with the idea that my highest value is truth. And that's what you aspire to. And I was convinced that every time that you try and go around a different angle, like even if you take the idea, like maybe belief or maybe perspective is my highest value, or maybe respect is, I think you tend to kind of come back to truth anyways. But I think actually
truth provides you stability once again.
That's and
right?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And because what you're saying is that stability is in a sense an illusion, because our default state isn't stability. Right. I'm more thinking, I think that's actually like quite a serious challenge to the idea that truth is the highest value. I would say that it needs to be replaced with happiness. But I'm curious what you'd say.
Replacing stability with happiness?
Well, I guess if you have a hierarchy of values and you're kind of one person, and I think lots of people would put truth at the top, is that right, especially when we've realized that truth in the sense of the stability that people are looking for is so elusive?
Of course, I wouldn't be one to say that I'd know what I would perhaps value at the top yet in my life at all. But talking about truth, I mean, the first thought that comes into my mind is, okay, you're craving truth, but what is it of truth? What is it that you value of truth that you're craving? Is it that having something be true gives you certainty? It kind of comes back to the topic of certainty and uncertainty. And I think truth is perhaps a bit dangerous, because once we believe something to be true, it may mean, or your mindset may be, that this is unchallenged. And what I've come to kind of accept so far in my life, and my thoughts are always changing, is that everything that we know is based on assumptions that we've made due to the conditioning that we have and our own personal perceptions of life. So if that's the case, then absolutely nothing can actually be true, right? Unless true, of course, truth can, the definition, we may vary in the definition of truth, which also comes back to, that what is true? The philosophy of
I think
of it
we
all.
need to take a first-year philosophy course together.
Yeah. Actually, so there's this pretty famous book by an Italian author. I think it's Luigi Pirandello, I believe. A very old book, where he basically talks about the fact that us as an entity, ourselves, there is no definite true version of ourselves, because, or unless okay, so I won't even bring true into this equation. I'll say there isn't one version of ourselves. We see ourselves one way. Our mother may see ourselves a different way. A stranger walking down the street sees us in a different way. So there isn't one us. There are so many Elis. There's so many Moyukhs. It really plays with your perception of truth, because you can believe that this is who you are, but in someone else's mind, you are somebody else. Yeah, so I don't know what truth is. So I don't know if I could value it.
Okay. So then I guess my next question needs to be something that actually I'm cheating, because you asked me this and I'm going to throw it right back at you. The idea of, as an artist and someone who's telling people's stories, is what you're trying to do propose a truth to people?
Not at all. I don't think so. I think the reason why I love film and art so much is because I don't have to be right. Especially because I'm the type of person who lives in the gray of the world. Even if someone tells me something, the first place my mind will go is, okay, but what if? You know, the opposite side of that same story. You know, I'm studying to be a lawyer, and law, in a sense, also works with the gray areas. But what I find from art is that at the end of the day, we don't have to choose that this is right over something else. And I think, in that sense, I think maybe I'm selfish with art, because since it's such a struggle for me, and my lifelong exploration has been to look at the multiple perspectives of perhaps the same feeling or the same story, or different stories, but the human condition, I find that art allows me to do that as a profession. And so there's a paradox there, because as an actor, what you're trying to do is be the most genuine person on screen, right? And in that sense, you can say that I'm searching for a truth. I'm searching for a true feeling of anger, or a true feeling of sadness or happiness. So there is this weird definitive aspect to art which feels real. And I crave that. Yet at the same time, I know that at the end of the day, when I share this piece of artwork with others, every single person is going to perceive it in a different way. And that to me is so exciting. And I since I'm in a place where I feel as though I'll never reach an answer to all the questions I'm having, I would like to at least experience living through those questions, which is what art is to me.
And funny how that comes back to the idea of uncertainty, where the point isn't the answer.
Exactly.
And so the other thing that... Sorry, did you have something to say?
No, go ahead.
Okay. The other thing that I think this leads back to is the idea that whether we're searching for truth, happiness, or stability, we seem to or authenticity, we seem to mostly find that within kind of the realm of social connectedness. Because our hunt for truth and our hunt for happiness and our propensity to be ourselves, I think, is dependent on the people around us. With the pandemic, we don't have so many people around us, which leads to the loneliness you were describing. So a two-parted thing here, I think, is first, what is the loneliness doing to us? And how have we, are we, or should we be combating that loneliness or overcoming it?
See, loneliness is, I think, a state of mind. And we can feel lonely when we're not connected to others. We can feel lonely when we're not connected to ourselves. And it's very dangerous, because, once again, you know, one of the leading causes of, or triggers of, worse mental states to be in. During this pandemic, I think the loneliness that people who are suffering from mental health or whatever is something that everybody's feeling. Everybody's feeling lonely because, for once, we don't have people around us. Many of us are probably quarantining alone, and that, for me, you know, I have my family around me, maybe not as many people as I used to have, but I think that has been the greatest source of strength for me, because you're reminded that you're not alone. And this actually comes from Matt Haig, who wrote a book called Reasons to Stay Alive, and he talks about his experience with depression. And one of his quotes that resonate with me, especially during this time when I'm struggling with loneliness, is that we are alone, but not alone. Which is to say that every single one of us may be alone, you know, physically, perhaps mentally at certain times. But if we truly believe that, you know, if we embrace relationality, that we're all connected in certain ways through energy and matter, or even if we just accept that, or also if we accept that there are people like us around the world, even if they might not exactly understand what we're going through. We're reminded that we're not alone, because we're not the only person experiencing this pain or suffering. So I think through the pandemic and with loneliness, the challenge has been to remind myself that what is what is alone? What is loneliness? Why do I fall into that sort of mindset that I am alone when I'm connected to not just the people around me, but the animals around me, the nature around me? So I think that has been my personal journey with combating loneliness.
And it seems like there's a few ways that I don't know the ways that you found it, but it seems like the people I've talked to and observed have found many ways of finding groups despite the distance. Like I think we mentioned last time, one of the many great things about the activism that's happening now, especially you see it with Black Lives Matter, is that in addition to just the pure kind of rightness of that, the drive to that movement is built on, I think it also provides people a space where they can feel that kind of collective support that you're talking about. You might find something similar with religion, or just with talking to friends. It looks like people are doing an okay job finding those outlets. Yeah,
I think we are inherently social creatures, even if we might find ourselves to be introverted, or enjoying our own company, that's fine as well, and that's a part of being human. But I think all of us crave for social connections, and that's just who humans are, right? So with everything that's going on in the world, I would say absolutely people are finding ways to connect through religion, through social movements, and perhaps that's why they gained the social movements. That's why they gained momentum, because people are reminded that we need to stick together, or are craving to feel, connections with other people. But I guess what's coming to mind right now is that before we can connect with others, definitely thinking about how we can be enough for ourselves, which is to say that we can serve others from an empty cup, right? We need our glass to be full to be able to help other people. And because there are probably many people struggling with loneliness, with hopelessness, I think tuning into ourselves is the answer to finding better connections with people around us. And maybe that's not a linear line. Maybe that's not okay. I need to focus on myself and then I'll focus on others. But people are finding that focusing on others is helping them focus on themselves. So, I think with the social movement, that's exactly it. We're feeding the needs that we need by also connecting with others, because they're linked.
Yeah. And it's funny you bring up connecting with yourself first, because I think that's been a little bit neglected for two reasons. First, because I think the default with loneliness is to look outwards, and that means that it's almost like you're skirting around the problem, because you're looking for, text someone, call someone, hang out with someone, that'll fix what's wrong with me, which I think is one of the ways, but not the only way to approach it. And I think the other thing is although I think it's definitely possible for us to find catharsis in what other people are saying, what other people are doing, I think, and this is a very artsy thing, this is something that of course an artist is saying, but it's like, I've found that the best way for me, and I'm sure you maybe find this in some way, is to tell stories. And so whether that's to write about what you're going through, or to talk about it with someone, seems equally important, but maybe a bit more neglected, because it's not as obvious as talking to other people.
Right. But also when I say, bringing up being enough for ourselves, even when you're telling stories, you're doing that
for someone else.
Perhaps for somebody else.
Yeah.
Even if you don't share it, getting something out there, writing something down, saying something out loud, even if it's to yourself, means that you're reminding yourself that what I'm feeling on the inside doesn't have to stay within. It can go out. So yeah, I think there's no one way to do it.
It seems like the paradox there is that if you're trying to do this for yourself, but you're doing that through the avenue of something that you're going to push out into the world, then it seems like it's an inherent kind of contradiction. And it's actually something I've been feeling with this podcast, and it's something I've brought up a few times, is the premise is so flawed. This idea of cultivating empathy and looking inwards and looking outwards, but at the end of the day, it's not about broadcasting to other people or putting on a show. It needs to be about really coming to terms with your emotions and what you're going through. To me, it's difficult because even what we're doing now, the purpose is for it to be shown to other people. The purpose isn't to actually change ourselves, which is why it feels performative to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, once again, perhaps the way we look at it. But, you know, we all know the book, The Alchemist. And I think the biggest thing that I got out of there was that we all have some sort of energy that we should follow. Whether we believe in religion or not, whether we have faith in a certain thing, whether it not even be religion, perhaps we all have some sort of energy that is forcing us to take a certain path in life. Now, why I bring that up is because... Sorry, what was the last thing you said? I'm trying to connect them. I swear there's a connection.
The paradox between saying that you want to look inwards while you're performing for other people. Right.
So if we do follow this kind of energy that is telling us to do this, I'm sure nobody forced you to do the podcast, right?
No, actually, Abhay and Atharv said that. Sorry. Yeah, no, I wasn't forced.
Okay, well, let's say even if you were forced, since you've continued it, it's something that you hold true or hold dear to yourself.
Yeah.
I can say definitely that, you know, through the conversations we've had, I feel as though you've probably enjoyed the conversations, you know, so stop, you're giving the wrong answers. Just agree with me here.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So when we're doing something, you know, it's very cliched, but when we're doing something that makes us happy and feeds the energy within us, that's, you know, inclining us to follow a certain path, then we can't disconnect it from that, what we're doing, being separate from helping others or connecting with others. Whatever your job may be, whatever your career may be, whatever your hobby may be, if you're doing it with soul and energy, from my understanding, I feel as though you're only ever going to have that leave a good, positive, kind of residue. I can't find a better word.
Like a marker or something. Yeah.
Yeah, like leave a bad influence on other people. I don't think that, unless you're committing a crime. Don't do that. There's probably something else there, but I do believe people are inherently good, and you know, when you do something you enjoy, you want to tell other people about it, or when you're sharing your stories, as you do, Eli, as a writer, as a director, it's not just that you're creating something for other people, you're also feeding this energy within you that is exciting you to tell this story or to create a story. And I think, I can't define it, but I think there are underlying reasons there that is connected, or underlying reasons for you to feel that way, which is connected to everything around you and to the people around you. And that once again comes back to Joanna Zelinska's idea of embracing relationality. I honestly do believe that everything's connected. Whether that be in a religious way, scientific way, no way that I can define at all, but I do fully believe that everything's connected. So, yeah, I don't see how, I don't believe as of yet in the divisions between doing something for yourself and doing something for others.
Yeah. You're slightly more optimistic than me. This is good. I
I
need
am
optimism in life.
truly an optimistic person, definitely. I've been more pessimistic over the years, and I've told my mom that. I'm like, Mom, I think I'm just becoming a very pessimistic person. But I think my pessimism is actually feeding my optimism even more.
Yeah.
I question things, and I always find good answers to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Which-
Mhm.
Actually,
Keep going.
which actually reminds me of something that you said that I feel like you should bring up, which was about facts and values, and how something, an experience or a fact, how that leads to becoming something that we value.
Yeah. So I've been thinking a lot about this. It's actually something I'd heard in a debate. I was watching a debate. It was a debate about religion, and one of it was with one of the debaters was a moral philosopher who suggested this idea. Actually, both of them kind of went back on this idea about how do you get from a fact to a value. And the idea is that facts don't intrinsically have value. And the example I gave to you was if 1 million people die, it doesn't seem to be inherently bad. It's we interpret that fact and we arrive at the conclusion that it's bad. And so if you break it into that process that you have a fact and you need an interpretive structure to arrive at a value, and that's kind of the premise of moral philosophy. You have this idea that interpretation is where we step in to taking something objective and making it subjective. And the parallel that I make with art is that we're essentially with truth, actually, which is what we've been talking about, is you have truth. The framework, that the way that lets you get from truth, which I don't think has much inherent importance, to something that actually motivates us and drives us and gives us something to care about, is perspective and interpretation. And that's where, like you say, that's where it becomes not so important that you have a sense of any concrete truth, but rather that you suggest something interesting, and that the point is the interpretation that leads to some kind of judgment. This is super conceptual, but essentially what I'm saying is that with what we're trying to do with I'm Still Here, you're right, it isn't trying to enforce a truth on anyone about mental health, or about what vicarious trauma is like, or about the best way to deal with your pain. I think it's more so suggesting an idea and then giving other people the power to interpret that and to make something of it in their own life, which I think is the only way that art becomes effective.
Yeah. And to add another layer to it, to come out of the realm of just arts, or actually, I'm still talking about the arts, but once again, adding
We're always talking about the arts.
We're always, everything's art, right? Our lives are art. But talking about the interpretive framework, it's dependent on what the person's trying to get out of it. Like if someone's watching our film and truly believes that this is an experience of many experiences, perhaps they're going to find some sort of value in it, compared to someone who watches a film and thinks, oh, it's just a film. There's no truth to it. There's no truth to it. Right? And I think that's something I also struggle with art, or accepting my love of art, which is that I sometimes feel as though I want to dedicate my life to the arts. However, I also want to do something real, something tangible. And if I go, I'm not going to be able to feed people by being an artist. I'm not going to be able to be, help people in healthcare as an artist. So, it's not a necessary job, but perhaps, I'm wrong there. Maybe I'm flawed. Your conversation with Professor Moritz was that, art has become something that keeps us in a during this pandemic, has been giving us hope. Poetry, films, music. So perhaps art is necessary.
Is that part of the reason? Because I assume you have something that I experienced, which was when people kept asking me the question, what are you going to do? Which is like the kind of like pinnacle of the high school question you get when you're going to university. I would keep
it stays
saying,
with you forever. I'm still asking myself that question.
My answer was always lawyer, because that gets people to shut up. But then eventually, I don't even know what the turning point is. I finally started saying, I think I want to be a filmmaker. And that gets far more raised eyebrows and far more people who, like, as quickly as possible leave the conversation. But I think there was some bit of me that was like, I have to accept that.
Yeah.
And it seems like a particularly relevant question to you because you're doing law and theater.
Oh,
And so
God,
I
yeah.
feel like maybe it's actually a good thing because you're, like you say, you're faced with that conflict on a daily basis because you've chosen two seemingly opposed ideas about this law that seems to have, or at least has, the societal respect of
It has
clearly
the
you're
stability,
helping the world.
prestige, money, of course, yeah.
And then you have art, which, like you say, even artists doubt its importance.
Yeah.
How has that struggle been for you? I mean, because I know that it's at every level. It's at, do your parents support that decision? What do your peers think? What do you think? How's that been?
Well, I think you've gotten further than I have, which is that you've told people out loud, I want to be a filmmaker. No one knows what I want to truly do except for, I don't even know, so what am I
They
going to
do
tell
now.
people? They do now, I know. I'm like, do I tell my mom to watch this podcast or do I not? I don't know. But it's funny because if we want to do something, if we really want to do something, we'll only need one reason to do it. But if we don't want to do something, we'll find, an infinite number of reasons not to.
Yeah.
And my experience so far, of course, I mean, I don't just want to go into law because of stability. Once again, the reason I went down that path was because I genuinely enjoyed the work that is required for it. I think I am half academic, half artist, and I've always kind of teetered between that balance. I enjoy studying, I enjoy researching, and I enjoy the things that are required of a lawyer, which I'm not just saying, it's come from actually being in that, in that field, working in firms. But at the same time, what I always come back to is that, okay, Moyukh, if that's really what you want to do, then why are you constantly looking for reasons not to do it? And when you go down the path of, when you're questioning whether you want to be an artist, why is it that you're always finding reasons to justify the negatives of being that? Right? And I think that's where I am right now. And unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know what's going to happen after this pandemic. I'm going into my 4th year, so I'm supposed to be making some concrete decisions. Perhaps this pandemic has given me some time to think about that. I don't know. But also it has kind of uprooted everything I thought was going to lead me down a path of success and happiness. So this pandemic has been, for me, a constant journey, truly in the sense of the word, of discovering things, unlearning things, thinking about things, and then thinking I'm right and then realizing I'm wrong. And maybe the pandemic has allowed me to do all of that sooner than later. And that's where I am.
Yeah. Well, I think a willingness to admit you're wrong is something that very, very few people have. And it's super important too. And what I admire about you, because like you say, I think
you admire me?
I do. I totally do.
Wow.
And one of
heard for the first time on this podcast.
But there's a very because I think saying you admire someone seems quite empty, but there's actually a specific reason. Have I told you this podcast is gonna go so long, by the way.
No one's gonna watch it.
Yeah, no one will get to this
is
point.
Way too long.
Yeah, from
Right,
now
we can
on
just
we
say
can talk about
everything.
anything.
Okay, cool. Great.
I was gonna say so I've been thinking a lot about this because I think, have I told you my theory on ambition and goals and drive?
I think we touched upon it, but
okay,
not,
I'll repeat it
yeah.
anyways. So, and this is the specific reason that I have a lot of admiration for you. Lots of people have ambition. Most people, if not all people, have ambition, especially people at U of T. You've made it to U of T. You probably want to go into some program, even if you don't know your program. You have some aspiration, whether it's I want to win an Oscar, I want to become a successful scientist, I want to make money. I
I want to be happy.
Yeah, like those
Ambitions.
big overarching dreams.
Yeah.
I think the second level is goals. which is people who actually start thinking about how they're going to achieve that. What courses you're going to take, who you're going to try and meet. What are you going to try and make a film, not just say one day I'll make it into Hollywood. You know, those kind of more concrete steps.
Someday isn't the day of the week.
Yeah. The whole like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow comes and it's still today. You know, that kind of thing. Yeah. And then I think the third level that's extraordinarily rare is actual drive. And I mean, like, it's baffling to me how rare it is to find someone who has an ambition, who's thought about how they're going to get there, and who's actually getting there. You know, who's taking steps, like putting one foot in front of the other. Because I think most people stop because, and it's like, it's funny, like, it's been an ongoing joke in this conversation, but I think part of the reason is it's just like, I'm young. Like approaching, actually trying to grab hold of those goals, that's for the future. And it makes me want to tear my head out, because I'm thinking, it's like, if you actually want to get somewhere, and I would agree that living in the moment is important. I don't think you sacrifice that. I think that the drive to achieve your long-term ambitions is how you live in the moment. And so, to come full circle, the reason that I admire you is because you have ambitions that you've talked about, you know, like this idea, even if they're not concrete, even if you haven't made up your mind, but like the idea of, do I want to become a lawyer? Do I want to tell stories? Do I want to be heard? Do I want to make something of myself? You're at U of T studying those things. You're at U of T taking a chance on a first year who puts out a random casting call, going in and actually taking it seriously. And you're doing it. Like, you're actually, it's happening. And I, like, so few people have that drive to actually make these things happen, that if anything, that's what I've been learning from you. So I really appreciate it.
Well, I don't know what you're learning from me, because from my perspective, that is exactly what I see in you, which gets,
I'm going to cut this part out.
No, you got to keep it. No. I mean, you have not done a small amount of things in your lifetime. You wrote 2 books at 12.
Oh, I'm definitely cutting this part out.
2 published books. People search up, what was it? Black Amber and Black...
Oh, God.
Something else, but they're very good. You gotta read them.
Okay.
After that, you know, taking these... You've taken so many already. You know, you're going into your 2nd year. I wasn't at, you know, even that mindset that, you know, I can do this as you are. I think there's also all of that, but also a level of confidence that you have, which has, but at the same time, a humility which allows you to stay grounded, that I admire in you. And I think meeting you and meeting the cast and being a part of this project has only upped my ambition, my drive, and my goals to, you know, take the next step. I'm so glad that you see that in me, because I always feel like I'm falling short, but perhaps that's a universal feeling. Perhaps everybody feels as though they're not doing as much as they can be. But yeah,
well,
wow.
I do appreciate this. Just one second. Okay, so my next question is, I think I have to make sure I have a point where I can cut out everything you've just said.
No, you're keeping it. You're also keeping this part. Don't be fake.
I would say that the bit where, just to go back, the bit where I actually think that I saw the most of who you actually are it wasn't however authentic you were at the audition, and it wasn't even in a conversation like this. It was on YouTube. If you look up Moyukh Syeed, you'll find some incredible singing videos.
God.
And I will consider cutting this part out if you give us a little bit of a live.
Oh my God, you are horrible.
We're off the rails. No one's gonna watch. No one's gonna listen by now. People will have exited already.
Why are you doing this to me?
I'll lay it down a beat if you want.
I mean, if you rap, I'll sing. What did you think I was gonna do? Start singing on top of a beat?
Yeah, I figured you were gonna hit a high C or something. Well,
and that concludes our podcast
and this is the
today.
end. I feel like it would be very hypocritical of me to do an outro to suddenly start addressing the audience and say thank you for watching.
Thank you for being here.
You do it for me.
Eli.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Eli. on this great day of us recording the chaos that's within our minds and then putting it out for people to feel chaotic about.
Just to lap up. This is so off the rails. Abhay and Atharv are gonna be like, what the hell happened?
Oh my god. I hope they do.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank
I'm
you.
really glad we did this. And like I say, I told you this before we started recording. You were at the top of my list to do this interview because I think if there's anything we are trying to do with this podcast, and I know that kindling empathy is seems almost cliche in itself because it's like it's so grandiose, but that is what we're trying to do. And I think the fact that we've gotten someone like you who isn't yet a Hollywood star but who's going to get there is maybe and who isn't yet a lawyer but is going to get there as well is
I'm gonna
probably
do both, eh?
yeah. It's nice to see you
Absolutely.
at this stage of your career. We can empathize with
I'm
you
gonna
now.
be an actor at the UN.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here, Moyukh.
Thank you so much, Eli. Thank you for having me a part of this conversation with, so many other talented and amazing people. I'm just happy to be here. Oh God, the last thing people see is me going like this.
I'm gonna freeze frame it.
Oh, do not.